Hi, everyone. I'm Troy, and this is the Worsted Fiber Podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Troy. I am the creative behind Fox and Oak Designs, and I am a yarn spinner, a pattern designer, and an amateur musician based in Prince Edward Island. So today we're just going to have a quick little episode just to talk about the different things I have been doing lately. The last episode, you might remember that I was getting ready for a concert with the choir that I'm in, Luminos Ensemble. And that has since happened. That happened a week ago today. For me, a week ago yesterday for you guys, since if you're watching this on Monday, the Monday this goes up. And this past week has really just been a week of catch up, despite the fact that many things had been canceled or has been postponed or whatever. I feel like I really haven't had very much time to do anything. So we'll just leave it at that. I worked a very long week last week due to a dentist appointment, a doctor's appointment, different things like that. So I ended up working 6 days in a row this past week. So it's been, yeah, I've been pooped. I've been pooped. So to give you a little more detail about the ensemble that I'm in, the Luminos Ensemble was established there in 2015, 2016. This is our 7th season. So whatever the math works out to be. And it's run by Dr. Margot Rayskin, who is a fantastic maestro. She started the choir because PEI didn't have a professional mixed choir, meaning that there were men's and women's voices, or high low voices and low voices. And she's been growing the choir ever since. And I have been in that choir since its inception. In fact, I'm one of the few members that have been in every concert since its inception. As I mentioned last time, we did a very, very powerful program. Unfortunately, I know that one of my viewers asked if we can record it. It is only recorded for Canada grant writing, so that can't be released, as far as I know, can't be released to the greater public. It's really just for grant proposals. So I'm unfortunately unable to give you a link to that. But rest assured, our next concert coming up at the end of May is actually our CD launch. So if you follow the link down in the description on either this week's podcast or last week's podcast, or last time's podcast, you can go to our website, which includes a playable track that you can listen to the single that we recorded last year, that we have been nominated for Best Choral Recording of the Year from the ECMAs, which is the East Coast Music Awards. And the CD that recording is part of is being released at the end of May. So we're doing a concert of all the music, so that way if you come see us live and you want to remember that for the rest of the time that you own a CD player or have access to a streaming service, then you can buy a copy of our album at that time, or download it at your leisure once it becomes available after that concert. So enough about music, because people come here, I am assuming, for knitting, because this is a knitting podcast. I just want to get right into what I've been working on. I know today is supposed to be like my finished objects podcast, and this is the second one in a row that I haven't finished any items. I'm just going to chalk it up to being busy. But I have been working. I have been working at some things. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Sylphide jacket. So you might notice that I am working away here. These are the bishop sleeves of the jacket. I think I told you the story last time of how I was casting this on, how I tried it a number of different ways. I ended up starting by doing the long tail cast on, and then I ended up ripping it out 6 or 7 times, and I ended up doing a long tail cast on again, despite how small this sleeve seems to be. Jess can fit her hand in no problem. I can squeeze my hand through, so it shouldn't be a problem at all. And now I'm working 2 at a time on my 47-inch cable from Knitter's Pride, and I'm working using Magic Loop. I still dislike the Magic Loop, despite the fact that I have been using it quite often lately, actually. Like, I don't like doing it, but it has its utility for sure. So I'm working both these sleeves. It feels like I'm working very, very slowly. And I mean, I am. But at this point, like, I have, between the 2 sleeves, I've got, I think, 394 stitches on the needles. So it is taking me about 20-25 minutes to get through a round on the sleeves. And I still have another, I would say, 20 rows before I start decreasing for the sleeves, which then the decreases happen very quickly. You decrease 20 stitches per row every so many rows. And I'm not going to tell you because it's the pattern, the pay pattern. But like it's like big, like the decreases are quite quick. So once it's been decreased there after X amount of rows, then I'll just be working in the round and waiting until it's long enough to attach. I have noticed as I've gotten back into this that it's actually a little hard on the hands. I think it's just because of how I hold my knitting while I'm doing purling. Like, I find that, like, I'm holding these 2 fingers closer together, so there's a little bit of tension. So I feel like soreness inside of my hand. It's not like in the joints, it's in the muscles. So I don't know if I just need to stretch my hands out a little bit more, or maybe get a compression glove, because it's not affecting this hand. It could also be, it could be in combination with some of the practicing that I've been doing, because Margot has asked me to audition for the Luminos Chamber Orchestra, because I'm a clarinetist by trade, not a singer. And I have been practicing clarinet quite often, and my little clarinet doesn't have any support straps or anything like that. Where in my undergrad, I had like a neck strap that would hold the weight of the clarinet. So like I was really just moving my fingers. But I lost the strap years ago, and I haven't been bothered to go buy to go get another one. So holding the clarinet, which it's only 2 or 3 pounds, but like having that extra weight on my hand while I'm trying to bring passages up to the high speed that it needs to be played at, I get tense sometimes, and I think that might be part of it. But I'll do some hand stretches and get back into it. Yeah. So this is the Sylphide jacket by Helene Arnesen, and I'm working in Belfast Mini Mills Island Collection fingering. The pattern is written for sport weight. I know I've said this before, but our Island Collection fingering blooms a little bit, so I think it's going to be fine. And I am currently working on the sleeves. I've gotten a little bit done on the bluebell pattern. I don't know if it's gonna, that looks fine. So you can start seeing that the bluebells are coming in. So like the spines that are here, each of those are going to be the stems to a bluebell. And I'm just about to finish this last bluebell here, or this first bluebell, this first round of bluebells. And after I finish the rounds of bluebells, then I start decreasing. I am using my Knit Picks needles, and I'm using a Knitter's Pride cable, a 47-inch cable, which I think works out to be 160 centimeters. No, that's not quite right. 120 centimeters. 120 centimeters there. Yeah, so it's just it's a little slow going, honestly. I haven't really had that much time to sit down and knit. The majority of the knitting that I have been doing is at work when I have customers. So it's kind of like I'm quickly paying attention and then not paying attention, and then having to rip something out because I haven't been paying attention. And then the other times where I have time to knit, when I get home, sometimes I'm just not in the mood to knit these past couple weeks. So yeah, it's slow going. I hope to finish it pretty soon, especially since Joanne is catching up on our whip smackdown. She says that she's given up, but I think we should encourage her down in the comments to keep going, because I don't want this to be a win by default. I want to win because I am staying on top of my knitting. So I will see Joanne for you guys tomorrow at knit night. So definitely comment down below, roast her a little bit in the comments, and I'll make sure that she's read every single one of them at knit night on Tuesday. So the other thing I want to talk about is I am redoing a need to move the float prawn. I'm redoing a project that I had done before. So you might remember the Lost in Time shawl that I started and finished there a little while ago. I did it in Taproot's Rambouillet Gradient, I think is what it was called. It was a big old honkin' like 300-gram ball that was it's a single ply lace weight. It was a lovely yarn to work with, and lovely yarn to work with. So I decided to do the shawl again because I wanted something complicated, but not so complicated that I can't just, do it on the fly. So I restarted this in the new year, just as the new year started, and I am working this in Vijay Fibres Mullberry Silk. This is a line of silk that I used to sell in my own store. And we have a couple of skeins left at Belfast Mini Mills. It is a pricier yarn. The single skein, which is about 100 grams, costs, I think, $50. And that's our cost. Like, we're literally just trying to break even on this. So like, it is a pricier skein. When I sold it in my store, or when I attempted to, I tried to sell it for considerably more than $50. Because I wanted to make money off of it. And it was out of the price range of my customers. But it's knitting up really beautifully, or crocheting up really beautifully. Since the strands are very quite even, you can see all the stitch work really, really nicely. I find that the clusters, I think they're called popcorn stitches in the pattern, the clusters are a little less clustery than they should be, but the combination of double crochet through the front posts, there, these little things, I think they're showing up really, really beautifully in this yarn. It's showing up a little bit more blue on the camera than it is in real life. This is more like a forest green and olivey green sort of deal, as opposed to the like green, olive, and like almost spruce that's showing up. It's it's coming along nicely. I'm using a Clover 2.75 millimeter needle hook. Clearly, I don't talk about crochet very often. So we don't sell the Clovers at Belfast Mini Mills. We sell the Knitter's Pride Waves, which it's effectively the same thing. It's got the same kind of like soft silicone. Well, it's not super soft, but the kind of grippy silicone ergonomic handle, and they are aluminum tipped like these ones, and they work exactly the same way, and they feel exactly the same way. I do have a single one of those hooks, just not out. Yeah, so this is the Lost in Time shawl by Mijo Crochet. It is a top centered down shawl. Currently I'm working on the back side. And it's one of those shawls that, like, once you get into the groove of it and you know what the pattern calls for, and what the patterns that are like it is a pattern, but it's like not the schematic pattern, but like you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this next row, and then I guess it's all patterns, no matter which way you cut it. Oh, the English language. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, so that's so this is what I've been working on. So the last thing I want to talk about is I'll give you more details on it here in a couple of days with the lacewing shawl that I'm working on. But you might have noticed that there's nothing attached to this anymore. I decided today to rip out what I had done and start over. So I go into greater detail, and maybe a little bit rushed detail there, and for the episode that I will be uploading later on this week. But suffice it to say, the issue that I was having was the way that I was knitting this up, or the way that like it would have worked out had I worked more of the pattern, is that the wings wouldn't have been symmetrical. It would have been very clear that like if you were to think this is a petal shape, so not like a paisley, for example, there's a direction to the paisley. I was just putting 4 paisleys in the same direction next to one another, and it's very clear that I just like chopped 2 petals out of the pattern. And I was also having issues getting the edging across the top to be symmetrical, to be the same. So I was like, as I was working through the pattern, I was like coming up with ways for me to have the same kind of eyelets on the edge of the border without actually increasing my stitches, without it being too, and it just made it more complicated for myself. So what I've decided to do is rip it out. I'm going to actually take 2 of the petals, we'll call them, and mirror them. So that way the pattern grows out symmetrically, and ideally will come out a little bit more, well, perfect is not the right word, but like it will quell the perfectionist that is my brain when it comes to this particular pattern. So I had only gotten into like the 15th or 17th row, as this is a like pattern for front side, rest row back side sort of deal. So I wasn't that far in the shawl. I think I might have had 70 stitches on my needles, since it grows quite quickly. But I decided that it was time for me to rip it out then, because I knew that it wasn't going to be what I wanted. And after like really looking at the way that I had already knitted and how much I've already knitted, that I would be able to tell that like I changed direction, like 2 or 3 inches into the shawl, and I didn't want that to be the thing that I constantly looked at when it came to this. So the greater detail that I go into and will go into, because I'm doing kind of like a few shots, because I'm going to restart this here later today, and hopefully have as much done as I had before here on Thursday when I upload the Lacewing shawl episode that I'm planning on doing. So that way you can see exactly what I was doing. I had meant to take a picture of this before I ripped it out, but then I decided to rip it out on camera because I didn't really think too much about that whole thing. I just like set everything up, took a quick video, said something, did the other thing. It was just how things evolved as time went on. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time this week to shoot a tutorial. I won't have enough time to do something like that until later in the week. And it had occurred to me earlier today that I forgot to upload the standalone video for last week's tutorial. So you'll probably have seen that I've uploaded that. And I'll upload like an actual tutorial next week. Comments down below if you want to know what it is, or if you have an idea of what it is. Because I'm not really sure what I'm going to do at this point. I might do something tomorrow evening. We'll see. So moving on to the Lace Masterclass. So I did a little bit more research. I've been reading through the Dr. Rosalind Chapman's thesis on the history of lace knitting, and finding a lot of more resources that I really should get my hands on and really get cracking at reading through. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the origins of some of the patterns that are listed in here. Right. So now that I got my notes here, so Dr. Chapman made a few references to a few people. So Elizabeth Lobick, you might recognize her name. She's the author of The Magic of Shetland Lace Knitting. That's the book that I have. That includes a number of motifs and a few like full patterns that are in the style of Shetland lace knitting. And in Elizabeth's book, Northern Lace, The Same But Different, subtitled Shetland Lace in a European Context, she mentions that there are 6 motifs in particular that are widely regarded as as some of the first motifs that show up in Shetland lace knitting. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the cat's paw, which is up on your screen here now. It is like well, it doesn't really look like a cat's paw to me. It looks like a flower as far as I'm concerned. But it is similar to the strawberry stitch, which is also going to be up on your screen somewhere over here, in Ornberg shawl style knitting from Russia. And I think it's and the difference between these two stitches is they look very similar, but they are worked differently. I'll give you some more details on that later. And the Ornberg style also has its own version of a cat's paw. And I think it's really interesting that like they have similar names, even though the patterning is different. So it could very well be a representation of like, for a lack of better term, like convergent development. So on the same lines of like convergent evolution. But like the convergent development where like these two styles developed at the same time in two different places, and that like there are some similarities and there are some like overlapping terms that can kind of get a little confused. I think part of the problem in these terms getting confused because, you know, the strawberry stitch and the Shetland cat's paw look very similar, but the Ornberg cat's paw, which I'll put below the cat's paw, it'll be up on your screen labeled. They look differently, even though they're the same thing. I think it might be a instance where like the translation of different languages is affecting how we look at it. Because just because something is translated from one language to the other, there is like nuances that are lost. An example, when it comes to Russian specifically, Russia, the way that they like describe color, they have a word specifically for light blue that we don't have. Like they view the color light blue the same way that we view pink, right? We don't say light red, we say pink. And we have an idea that pink is its own color family, when really it's just light red. They look at light blue as the same way. It's its own color family, different from blue. So like, because of how their language is formed, it's really changed how their perception of color is around that. And I think that the cat's paw, it might just be an example of how like the direct translation, some of the nuance is lost. I personally don't think that the Shetland cat paw looks like a cat paw. I think it looks like a flower. It might be derived from a cat's paw flower. Couldn't find anything on that. Maybe I'll do a Google search when I another Google search when I'm editing this podcast here later today for you guys, and find that I don't really know what I'm talking about. We'll see. The next one, it has a couple of different names. It's called the Old Shale, sometimes called the Old Shell pattern. It's considered quintessential by Elizabeth Lovick, as well as Richard Rutt. Richard Rutt is apparently Richard Rutt is a historian and author who wrote the book A History of Hand Knitting. And I haven't got my hands on this book because when I went and looked it up and found it on Amazon, it suffers from textbook pricing. So it's $112 for a book. I'm not saying that it's not worth that, but I think it's getting the textbook treatment where it's a book that really should only cost $40, $50, and it's being... Anyway, I'm going to get into that. Yeah, so the Old Shell pattern is up on your screen now. And Sharon Miller, who is another design and historian, indicates that this pattern, it's her theory that this is where fan and feather patterns in knitting and crochet is derived. I think more specifically knitting. So fan and feathers, I'm sure you've seen a fan and feathers blanket. It's just, eyelets on one side and then decreases. And by stacking them in such a way, it causes a ripple effect. And the Old Shell pattern, or the Old Shale pattern, Sharon believes that this is what the fan and feathers pattern design is derived from. Yeah. The new one is the New Shell. There wasn't really any information in Dr. Chapman's thesis about this particular pattern. There doesn't seem to be anymore. I haven't had a chance to look further into Elizabeth's book or find more writings from Sharon Miller to get more details on that. But this is this is the new shell pattern that you can see on your screen. The next one is a horseshoe pattern. So horseshoe is popular in a few different styles. It's usually done with eyelets, and it's in a number of different lace knitting techniques. So it's in Ornberg shawls, it's in Irish lace knitting, it's in Spanish lace knitting. It's this like the motif of making something look like a horseshoe is pretty common across all of Europe. And it's executed a little differently. So in Shetland shawls, which if I can find a few good examples, I'll put them up here on the screen. Sometimes they're using it as all over patterns, and sometimes they're using it as like border patterns. So they'll do like a row on the bottom or on the sides of their stole. So like they usually did rectangular pieces or square pieces. They would use that as like a border inside the border. So it'd be like main design, horseshoes all around, and then they do like their scalloped edges. And then there's two others that are here. So the diamonds pattern, if I have a picture on my computer, I should, of the Victoria Park evening shawl that I designed for our pattern book there a few years back. I use a variation of a diamonds pattern in this shawl. So it's an all over pattern. So the diamonds, it can be eyelet diamonds, like what I've got in there. It can be solid diamonds, like I also have in there. Mine comes out looking like a checkered board, but it's a very popular all over design. So it's one of those like easily followed. There's increases and decreases. It's one of those things. And the last one is the saltire. It's really just an X. So it is reminiscent of St. Andrew's cross. So that is, the cross that we think of the Scottish flag, the blue cross on the white background. So not like this, but like an X. That's the St. Andrew's cross. And these flag motifs were in a lot of Shetland lace knitting throughout the ages. I think kind of like I can't for sure say that this is what the intention was, but I feel like it's kind of a marker saying like this came from Scotland. This won't be confused with Ornberg or Irish lace knitting or Italian lace knitting. This is from Scotland. This is from maybe not Shetland specifically, but this is from Scotland. This is Northern Great Britain. And the last little thing I wanted to show is that there is a postcard, which I will put up on the screen if it is royalty free. If not, please go down to the link below on the page will be on your screen too. You can go download Dr. Chapman's thesis, so that way you can read it and you can look at this picture here too. But there is a picture of it's a postcard is what it is. It's the front of a postcard from the Sutherland Company that depicts a woman wearing a Shetland lace stole. And on the back of the postcard, it's written the details of that particular stole and how much it was selling for, which, I mean, as someone who tries to make his living off of doing knitting stuff, like this will always be something that I look at. And this lace stole was sold in 1905, and the person who I forgot, I'm looking at my laptop right now, so all my notes are here. So the image here on the screen is of a Shetland lace stole, and it was sent to Miss Joan Sutherland. This postcard was sent to Joan Sutherland from David Sutherland. Sutherland, not Sutherland. Sutherland. And he says, "Dear sister, what do you think of it?" Referring to the shawl of the postcard. "I may tell you I'm well pleased with it. It is larger and 20 grains lighter than I thought it would be. So it ought to please the lady it is made for. It is 3 1/4 yard long by 31 inches wide, weighs 1 1/12 ounce. Imperial measurements make no sense to me." Aside, and the price is £10. And this was sent November 14th in 1905. So I quickly plugged that into an inflation calculator from Great Britain, from England, and then took that amount and translated it. So that 10-pound Shetland lace stole, if sold today, would be worth £962 32 pence, or almost $1,600 Canadian, about $1,200 American. So this was a very expensive, although it probably doesn't even count for, well, the person who made it wouldn't make minimum wage today, much less back then, if such a thing existed. But I also did a little bit of math to figure out how big this stole was. So for our American friends, it is 117 inches by 31 inches. So it's quite long. So, someone who's 6 feet tall is 72 inches. So we're talking, this shawl was probably close to 8 feet long. Well, 3 yards, that's 9 feet. So 9.5 feet long. Ridiculous. So 9.5 feet long, and it's 31 inches wide. So, almost 2 feet wide. A huge, huge stole. It weighed 1 ounce and 1/12 of an ounce, which works out to be 31 grams. This shawl was 31 grams, which works out to be 1 and 1/12 ounce. So 31 grams would work out to be 2 tablespoons worth of water of weight. That's how heavy this stole is. So I'm flabbergasted by the spinning ratio that these women were able to spin, these really, really fine 2-plies that they were able to take 31 grams, spin it so finely to make a 2-ply, which then it was knit into a 9.5 foot long stole. Makes this seem practically bulky in comparison. I think as I continue reading into all of this, going further and further into Shetland lace knitting, I'm going to have my mind blown every time about exactly how fine and how meticulous all of these items were made, how much time went into them, and how little these women who were working on all this lace were paid in comparison, because $1,600 in today's money, in Canadian money, sounds like a lot of money for a stole, and I mean, it is a lot of money to a lot of people, right? But that would be representative of several hundred hours of spinning and knitting. So when you really get down to the nitty gritty, person's probably only making $4 or $5 an hour. Just astonishing. Astonishing. So I do have a little bit of a haul to show you, and it's, by a little bit, I mean it's very, very small. I have so far kept up with my New Year's resolution to not buy any yarn until I have worked up some of the yarn that I have in storage. But while waiting, just burning some time while I was in Charlottetown, I went to Indigo and I perused through a number of the sections. And of course, I went to the knitting section. It's only knitting and crochet takes up that much space on one shelf. So there isn't usually very many things there. So they had the saltwater mitts and the saltwater gifts and all of that. And I almost bought one of those, but then I saw this book. Viking Knits by Lasse L. Mattberg. I really like I really like this book. I'm going to show you the back of it there so you can see some of the knits that are in here. So the really cool thing about this book, because I only really glanced at it, saw a couple patterns here that I wanted to make, and I liked a lot of the styles of the men's sweaters, and saw that most of the sweaters that are in here are men's sweaters, which is unusual for most pattern books I've been finding, because it's usually women's patterns, which, most women are knitters. And if you're going to make a sweater, if you don't want to fall for the boyfriend sweater curse, you're going to make that for yourself, right? But there's some really, really lovely sweaters in here. There are a number that are unisex and can be translated into men's and women's sweaters. Some of them are colorwork sweaters, like the mountaintop sweater. Some of them are some of them are just textured sweaters, like the sailor sweater. And the thing I like about this book, not only are the sweaters stylish, but they're rather simplistic. The ones that are written specifically for men are quite masculine. And there's another one that's on the thing, on my list of things to do. I find that like they seem to be written for men who are a little bit stockier. At least the model that's in here, who is the pattern designer as well. He is built, but because of how he's a little bit wider, and he's wider than he is long in the torso, I feel like a lot of these patterns will work for me because I'm wider across the shoulder than I am in the torso. And this is the sweater that I am going to make because I really like that wide neckline and the hint of a button. I don't want to try not to show too much of the pattern there, but there's another listing of the books. So like you can see the really cool design feature. I really like that neckline. So this is going to be one of the sweaters that I do after I finished the Whip Smackdown and my what's it called? My New Year's resolution, like my Maker's Dozen. I think I have room on my Maker's Dozen. I think I only have 11 picked. I thought I had all 12, but I'm pretty sure I only have 11 picked. So I might put this on here and use the McCausland's wool that I had started with my little Waves cardigan. I don't think I bought a couple extra balls, but I still, I think I like that sweater that I just showed you. The, I don't even know what that one's called. Oh. Yeah, on the midsummer sweater. I like the midsummer sweater a little bit better than the cardigan, the Little Waves cardigan. So my choices are either to oh, I hit the microphone. Sorry. My choices, I think, are either going to be to like frog the Little Waves cardigan that I've done so far, frog it, and just restart the midsummer sweater with it. Or if I do feel like finishing the Little Waves, because that's like a September project. It's way in the future. I might splurge and pick up some Fleece and Harmony's Selkirk worsted, or some of the Rowan felted tweed, because I want to do a project in the felted tweed because I really love that line. But I also haven't worked with Selkirk worsted yet from Fleece and Harmony, and I feel like this might be a really good project for it. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with this. I hope you don't mind a shorter tutorial. Hope you don't mind a shorter podcast today due to some time constraints. And I will see you in a few days with the Lacewing episode, and then in a couple weeks with another full podcast there in April. See ya. All right. Oh, I didn't record any of that. So I'm a forgetful host because I forgot to do all the YouTube stuff and I forgot to give a rating. And then I just started recording this, or thought I did. I hit the record button, or so thought I did, gave the whole thing, and then waved goodbye. And apparently my phone picks up a wave as a, hey, start the timer. And then the timer started and now we're recording. So I'm going to rate this 1 out of 1 forgetful hosts. I feel like I've given that rating a few times. But if you like today's podcast, like, comment, subscribe, give me a rating down in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, the little thumbs up there if you like the video, and make sure that if you subscribe, you hit the notification bell. So that way you get notified of every time I upload a new podcast every second week, and any additional episodes like tutorials or the Lacewing project series that I'm doing. And I'll see you in a few days.